Hey everybody, welcome to the Big Huntsville Podcast, the show that's all about the people, places, and the stories that make this city an amazing place. I'm your host, Carl Thomas, your favorite realtor, singer-songwriter, and all-around Huntsville cheerleader. Each week, we'll be shining a light on the community heroes who make this city tick, having some fun along the way, and sharing a few real estate tips when you least expect it. So whether you've lived in Huntsville your whole life, or you're just thinking about calling Huntsville your new home, you're in the right place. Let's get started. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again with the Big Huntsville Podcast. I'm Carl Thomas, your host. Today, we're actually going to be diving in deep, finding out about what's happening here in Huntsville as far as our city growth, the planning for the city, and kind of what the next stages of Huntsville is going to look like for us, because that's really important. And most of us don't have a clue. I'm one of those folks. I don't know what it's going to look like. I know that things seem to be happening so fast, it's hard to keep up. Today, we have someone who can actually give us facts about where we're at, where we're going, and what happens next here in Huntsville. That man is Dennis Madsen. He is with Huntsville City. By the way, Dennis, Madsen, is that how you say it?
It is, though. It was a remarkably simple name that everybody manages to mess up. M-A-D-S-E-N, Madsen. Yes.
Well, I mean,
you a few to get it right.
You know what? It sounds like the kind of word that would really scare the Pope. Mad sin. Anyways, Dennis is the manager over the long range and urban planning for Huntsville City. He's been doing this officially in that position for over 12 years, right? Okay. All right. And so he oversees the long range planning for the growth of Huntsville. So he's actually the guy we need to be in touch with today. So I'm glad to have you here. Thank you, Dennis, for joining us, man. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, I wanted to just jump right in. I know you're a busy guy, so let me roll right through this stuff. The major thing that I know a lot of folks wonder is, what's coming next and how do we figure that out? So I did a little digging into you. I found out there is something called the Big Picture that Huntsville releases. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Big Picture. Tell us what that is and what it's all about.
Sure. No, that's a great lead-in. So the Big Picture is a lot of times a comprehensive plan, as a city's master plan that serves as its starting point. Not every city has one. Different states have different mandates in terms of whether or not a city needs to have one. For a long time, we really didn't have a formal comprehensive plan for the city. So the idea is it lays out what is the vision, not only just from city leadership, but also from the community in terms of how you want to grow. And we're not talking just physically, but also socially. What sort of things do we want to attract? What kind of economies do we want to attract? What kind of quality of life investments do we want to make? So it's all encompassing, but it starts at a very high level and provides kind of a roadmap that allows you, when new developments come into town or new job opportunities come into town, it provides you a little bit of a kind of a decision-making tree. And go, does this improve our community? Does this help us realize our goals to enhance local arts and culture? Does this realize our goals to help support our public school system or our education system in general? So it gives you that kind of baseline that then, as you start working your way through growth issues, you have a little bit of help in terms of seeing really what can contribute to your community. And there are policy pieces in there that talk about, one of the things we have done is we started a music office. Well, that was on the backs of one of the principles that was growing local arts and culture, right? The idea is cities and regions are really competing against each other, even more today than they have been in the past. And it's not just about housing and jobs. It's also about when you're not at home and you're not at work, what are you doing? What is it that makes you want to put a Huntsville bumper sticker on the back of your car, or wear a Huntsville t-shirt, or enjoy living here? What makes you want to move here or stay here? And building out that arts and culture, the unique sound of the arts community, the restaurants, the recreation, all that stuff that makes you actually enjoy living here. That's a very important part of a comprehensive plan as well. So all that feeds into kind of shaping our vision for the future. And then we have it digitally. They used to be these big kind of 3-ring binders that would sit on a shelf and collect dust. And we wanted this to be a little bit more accessible. So we've got it as an online website. Thank you again for asking. So it's bigpicturehuntsville.com. It is part of the city's website, but you can go to its unique address there. And it's broken out in very easy kind of digestible bits. It has principles, which are the big kind of decision-making ideas that we kind of want to use to shape our future. It's got policies, which suggest changes around, transportation and land use and recreation and things like that. It's got places, which are about specific areas, say Greenway Master Plan or the Downtown Master Plan or a Cove Area Master Plan. Those are all in under places. And then the last part is kind of how we got here. Was the process, and it has old videos of public events that we had. It's got old speeches from bike advocates and a Greenway planner. So it's all that stuff is kind of baked in there. We do kind of annual updates to our Greenway plan. We do additions to this plan. And the nice thing about digital is it's more accessible to the community, but it also allows us to update it as things change. So that's it in a rather large nutshell, but that's really the kind of guiding document. And then we work off of that, urban development and engineering and all these other departments can reference that as a baseline document as they're making decisions about how we go forward.
Yeah. Okay. So the big picture, anyone can go to that website. You don't have to have a login. You just jump right on and you can learn all about it. Well, that's cool.
That's the important part, because that's a really good question, because when we first published it, it took a couple of years really to put together, in no small part because we did a lot of public outreach. So one of the things that we always say in my profession is, I'm not going to know your neighborhood or your commute or your favorite restaurants. I'm not going to know your life as well as you do. And so for planners to have a really accurate map of the city, there has to be a lot of feedback. And we spent a couple of years doing online feedback and in-person feedback. We met with civic groups, we met with universities. We had one public meeting with a Boy Scout troop. I mean, it was fantastic. And a lot of it is it's back and forth like this. I mean, we talk about, you said that the best podcast guest is a guy who says yes, but these opportunities are important to us because it allows us not only to share what we're seeing, but also to hear back from the community, hear back from podcast hosts. We talk to civic associations. I've been out to talk to garden clubs. This has to be kind of an ongoing dialogue so that we can stay up to date on what the concerns are among the people who actually live and work in Huntsville.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of people, I'm a realtor, so a lot of people will assume that I'm excited about all the growth that we're having because, apartment complexes seem to be popping up everywhere, even downtown. There's a lot of new stuff downtown. And so a lot of people will assume that I'm all about that because that means money for Carl. But what they don't realize is I live here. And I was born here. A lot of times nostalgia will take me over. I'm in my 40s. Nostalgia will hit me and I'll start, to be frustrated about these things that I see happening all around us. So I guess a good question that I get asked a lot that I'll pass to you is the apartment complexes. Do you believe they're necessary? Do you believe we need that much housing here?
Oh, and we hear that a lot. And apartment complexes they're very visible.
Yeah.
Change. I think a lot of folks don't at the same time notice the thousands of single family housing units that are also being put on the ground at the same time. It becomes apparent when you see an apartment building built. I will say, so my department publishes a document every year called the Annual Development Review. And we look at commercial permits and residential permits. We look at single family, multifamily, and we track these year over year. And a couple of kind of complementary influences really drove all that apartment development that you were seeing. So one of it was the fact that we are growing. We talk about this a lot. The numbers are kind of fuzzy out there with some folks. I mean, they get inflated or mixed up a little bit. The baseline over the past couple of years has been about 17 people a day move to the city of Huntsville.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Incorporated medicine, that is a lot, and it is a heck of a lot. So it's over 3% annual population growth over the last couple of years. That is a lot of folks. So if you start doing the math, you're talking about over 6,000 people a year. If we build typically maybe 1,500 single family housing units each year, you can get maybe 3,000 to 4,000 folks of that population into those houses.
Sure.
Where do the rest of them go? So apartments are a very important part of a housing ecosystem. They're not the only part. One of the things that we are excited about is that we're seeing apartments being built, but we're also seeing townhomes. We're seeing small lot homes. I'd love to see more condos built, but that has a little bit, there's some challenges around financing.
Sure.
So condos. But what we really want to see is that we're adding housing, we're adding a variety of housing. One of the keys to affordability, which is a very big concern of ours, really nationally, but also regionally and locally, is not just the housing costs, but helping people find the right housing for themselves. And if you have a diversified stock, it allows, a two-person household or a three-person household or any kind of special needs household to find the housing that fits their needs and fits their price range. So apartments are an important component of that. Another thing that drove that, and y'all in the realty community are going to be as familiar with this as anyone, is there was a lot of national investment being put into multifamily really around the country. You saw apartment spikes everywhere simply because it was an attractive place for large investors to put money. We're starting to see that soften. We're probably going to get this next year a lot of COs for apartments simply because it takes a while for them to work their way through the pipeline. But
Sure.
we're really already starting to see those apartment numbers drop. I will say too, going back in our development review, going back, say 20, 25 years, we were really underrepresented in apartment development. There were years where we were growing and we weren't building any apartments at all. So there's a little bit of catch up there as well. So you've got a lot of those things kind of working together that created that apartment boom over the last few years. It can be a little sort of startling when you see, this new 4-story building where there was a, little strip mall or something like that. But it is, A, it is an important part of our housing ecosystem. And B, I think we saw kind of the big bulge of that growth over the last couple of years, and that's going to start to soften going forward. But, the one
Yeah.
we're excited about though is that we do, as we continue to grow, we do need to put housing on the ground. We do need to keep making sure that we're adding to our housing stock. Apartments are part of that, but they're not going to be the bulk of that.
Right. Well, and so I guess they are, you're right, they're visible. And so when you're driving through the city, a lot of times construction will slow things down. Driving's hard. I'm a Southern gentleman. I was born and raised in the South, haven't been out of the country, don't leave Alabama very often. And when someone honks at me in traffic, I don't know. There's something about that that just hurts my feelings. It gets the cry reflex going. So I guess there's just a influx of people from other cultures and areas that maybe honking is part of their lifestyle. They're used to it, and I'm not. So where are a majority of these folks coming from? Do you know? Is there an idea?
We do track. So many from in-state and a lot from immediately surrounding states. We're getting some from Texas. We're getting some from Colorado. We're getting some from California.
Sure.
Pretty diverse mix. Some of them do come from honking states. I live here. I came from Atlanta. Now, Atlanta, you are on your horn more often than you're not on your horn. And so what I'd say is be patient with these people. They do not know our ways yet. They will come to learn. So, if they give you a honk, just give them a little smile and a wave and
Yeah.
they'll learn their manners. But so if you've been here for a while and you notice the growth, you will notice, there is more traffic, and that's going to come with growth. I would say a couple of things. One is if you want to take a little field trip, we can get my car and I'll go spend a little time in Nashville or go spend the time in my old stomping grounds in Atlanta, and you'll see what real traffic is. And then we'll come back here and you'll be like, oh, okay, I understand. And no, it's not just the big cities. Like you can go to Birmingham or Chattanooga, some of our peer cities that do not move traffic quite as well as we do. And that's in no small part. And a lot of this happened well before I got here, so I'm not taking any credit for it. It's been a long and sustained effort to really make sure our road network stays built up. And there's a lot of folks here. If you're at gate 9 at 7:45 in the morning, I get it. I mean, there's only so many cars you can fit through there at any given time. There's a few kind of hotspot areas, say in North Madison County, where you get a lot of new residential development. That's you're starting to see more traffic on some of the roads. But by and large, we tend to move traffic pretty well through the city. We want that to stay that way. So we have right now roughly $400 million in active and planned projects just on state and federal roads. So we continue to spend a lot of money on making sure our roads stay updated. And there's a very, very intentional way we're approaching that. So a lot of times it's not just about adding lanes and adding capacity on an existing route. a real high functioning network gives you a lot of different options to get from point A to point B. So a lot of our new projects are providing alternative routes or expanded routes to get other places where you're going. So, the Northern Bypass is a really significant project.
Yeah.
Takes, for you old school folks who know it as Ride Out Road, it takes Ride Out 255 and creates almost a half loop around the northern part of the city. That does a couple things. One, provides a new route through those neighborhoods, but also takes a little bit of pressure around that downtown junction at 565 in the Parkway. We've got the Arsenal East Connector, which will probably start in the next couple of years, starting up around 565. That provides an alternative route along the eastern boundary of the Arsenal to connect 565, the Arsenal, and South Huntsville. So that is an additional route that takes a little pressure off our existing route. Greenbrier Parkway is another example of that, providing a brand new route to take pressure off of 72 and off of 565. So it's all about, continuing to build out a really complete network. And, there's still good old fashioned widening and improvement projects that we're adding. We're working on widening 565 west of Huntsville. The mayor and our urban development and engineering teams are in active discussion with AlDOT and the feds about how do we get 565 and the Parkway interchange upgraded. That's one that's almost an Atlanta style interchange.
Yeah.
How much congestion you get there. That was one that I think the problem was really when in the past where they're shoehorning an interchange into an area where it didn't really fit.
Sure.
And we've known that for a while. So we've been planning and looking at how we could improve that interchange. But it's not going to be a cheap effort. It's not going to be without headaches. We're going to need state and federal help to really make that happen. And there are a couple other examples too. I think if you go out 72 East to Moores Mill and Shields, we did a little widening there over the past few years that helped a little bit, but I think long term to move folks in from the east, we're probably going to need to put overpasses at Moores Mill and Shields as well. And so those are in the plan, and all that kind of contributes into making sure that as we grow, we can continue to accommodate that traffic. Another part of it as well is kind of diversifying the way we get around. So it's not just about car traffic, adding to our transit network. We've been upgrading and updating our transit network. You're supposed to do it every 5 years, but our transit folks have been so busy, they're doing it a little bit more often. Every time we add or improve routes, our ridership increases. So we know there's demand out there. That's an important part of creating a sustainable transportation network. And then even the little things like adding more bike routes and sidewalks and greenways, all those feed into it as well. You're not going to have a huge number necessarily of bike commuters or folks using the greenways to commute, but it can contribute to making sure that your traffic's a little bit more flexible. And one thing that we've really seen over the last few years as technology has improved are intelligent traffic systems, or ITS. I think technology, especially around AI, can help us get more out of the asphalt that we have on the ground, right? We have some fairly well built out roads, but if we can manage the signalization really well, if we can manage the speeds really well, it can help us actually get better performance out of our roadways, do real-time signal changing and real-time traffic monitoring to help move folks around town, especially during our peak hours. So that was a very long answer.
No, it was good.
Question, but transportation's complex. There are a lot of things that go into it. When are people trying to get to work? Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? Where are they having to drop off kids on their way? All that stuff contributes to managing how we commute through the region. And really, we're drawing folks every day from as far south as Coleman. We're drawing folks from at least 3 counties in Tennessee. A lot of people are moving into and out of and through our region every day. So we spend a lot of time and no small amount of funds in making sure that transportation network continues to work.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I actually, part of my success in my career, it has been based on that road system being set up so well, because you can get a family who might not be able to afford downtown Huntsville and who needs to commute to Research Park, the Arsenal, Huntsville Hospital, and they can place themselves way out east of the city off of 72 East, or go all the way to Decatur and still have a very reasonable commute just because all of that is set up so well. Same thing with 231, 431 north to south. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And a lot of the negativity comes from locals like me who just get frustrated that things are happening. But I want to tell you, there's a lot of positive. One of those positives, I got a good example, is the Standard downtown. I love downtown. Downtown's my favorite. I played a part with DHI. I was able to work alongside Chad a long time ago and work that, kind of the growth of part of that downtown area. And it was so exciting to be a part of that. But one of the neat things about going downtown right now is there's so many new things. And the Standard's one of my examples. And I tell people about it all the time because the Standard is a unique dining experience. It is a restaurant bar. They have a great setup. But if you live in one of the apartments that's close by, you can walk to the Standard, shop for basic groceries there. You don't even have to eat. You can grab a drink while you're there and head right back to your apartment 5 minutes away. It's just an incredible setup. So one of those, that's a segue for me to talk about something that I hear about all the time, is that there is a land bridge coming to downtown that will connect basically, the way I understand it is it will connect the downtown that we locals consider downtown with the 35805 side. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
yeah, depending on who you talk to, some folks refer to it land bridge, some folks call it the sky bridge.
Sky Bridge. Okay.
It is really a bike and pedestrian project. It is one component is the actual bridge itself. So the bridge will launch from roughly the Constellation area behind the BBC, connect across the Parkway and Governors, and land near the new Mill Creek development, that residential on one side, as well as Low Mill on the other side of Governors. And the idea is, again, this goes back to our transportation themes of connectivity. The parkway is a very real barrier, especially if you're on foot or on bike. Heck, during high peak traffic, even if you're in a car, it's a barrier, right? It presents a very real challenge to get back and forth across there. In fact, we have had fatalities over the years of people, just because point A to point B is shorter, they'll try to run across the parkway itself. And you've probably, anyone who's driven on that with any frequency has seen someone try to run to the center barrier and then try to run across to the next side. So there are people who are trying to get back and forth across there. This allows a bridge to connect those two halves of the community and kind of bridge what is a very real divide. But I think a lot of folks probably don't recognize that a big part of this project isn't just the bridge, but it's also that ditch that's behind the VBC and the old Coke site, that concrete culvert.
Yes.
I mean, some folks may love a big concrete ditch. It doesn't do a whole lot well other than hold and move water.
Sure.
A big part of this project is also rebuilding that. So it has better flood capacity, but B, it creates something more like a linear park behind those two sites. If you think of like the San Antonio River Walks, it creates a place for a good bike and ped and park environment that connects the Sky Bridge. So you have this very long kind of linear park experience between the Sky Bridge and the improved creeks behind there. And the nice part about it, and we've had this in plans for, well, I mean, decades, since well before I got here. But we've been waiting for federal money to help. We actually got two separate grants. So more than 2/3 of the entire project cost is actually being paid for by the federal government. So
Okay.
that's been the nice thing about a lot of the infrastructure investment that's been coming down from Washington has been, it's enabled projects like this. It's enabled street project as well. Another route that's coming out of downtown, Holmes Avenue, is getting improvements thanks to a federal grant. We have a very good legislative representation. County Commission Chairman Strong, who's now a representative up there, he has found his groove in terms of being able to identify funding to help with projects like this.
Well, that's awesome.
He's been a fantastic cheerleader for Huntsville and Madison County, but that project is specifically about providing connectivity between the two halves of the town. And I love that you call out the Standard. It's one of my favorite lunch places. So actually, maybe don't call it out because sometimes it gets a little crowded in there. Their fish sandwich is one of my favorite lunches all over. But also, I like that you brought it up because it goes back to one of the things we talked about earlier, which is it's great to have, the big national amenities like the Cheesecake Factories and the Trader Joe's. Those are fantastic. I mean, I drop a lot of money at Trader Joe's, but to be really Huntsville, it's also nice to have the places that are uniquely Huntsville, right? To have La Esquina and the Standard and the Poppy and Parliament and all those other that are local restaurants, Cotton Row and Commerce. And I mean, you can go on for an hour to name all the great local restaurants that are starting to percolate up. And that's also a fantastic, it's nice to be able to bring folks in from out of town and go, we've got something here that is unique to Huntsville. And that's a wonderful thing. I love seeing that local business growth in downtown and really throughout the city. I think it's a great thing for Huntsville.
Sure. So when you're headed north on Memorial Parkway, when you look to the right, that is what us locals consider downtown, because that's where the tall buildings are. In the future, because of things like this sky bridge, in the future, will the public consider the things on the left side of the parkway, like where you head towards 35805 on Clinton or Governors? Is that going to be considered part of downtown someday? Is that going to kind of wrap into all that because of that connection?
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is downtown ends up with a lot of districts growing downtowns, areas that you identify as east side or north side or whatever you want to call them. So I would imagine, yeah, I mean you could imagine that everything on the other side of the parkway out towards Camp State 05 and Stove House could become west side, or it could be continue to be known as the Low Mill area. North side may become the Meridian corridor because you're seeing growth up Meridian, the investment that's been made in the Lincoln Mill area, that connection with Drake and A&M into North Huntsville, that's a growth corridor as well. You have, what's really already known as the medical district, the southern edge of downtown. So growing and healthy downtowns, instead of the downtown footprint becoming bigger, what they really do is they start to develop very unique districts that all kind of are a part of the bigger whole.
Yeah. Hey, is there any chance we'll bring back ropers? Uh, Man, back in the
She probably knows what you're talking about, but that's
okay,
what.
well, 80s and 90s Huntsvillians. There used to be a spot that us teenagers could go to called Roper's. It sat in a strip mall that where I think the embassy is now, where I believe this bridge is possibly going to be close to. So there was a strip mall with several different things there, but Roper's was a club that us kids could go to and dance, and it was like a country style. It was really, but our parents would just drop us off because it was the 90s and just leave us there. But you could go there and you could dance all night. I want you to put a bug in whoever's ear to bring back Ropers. I think our kids are missing out.
The nice thing is, I think you're right because my wife, when she grew up and she was in high school, I don't know if I should say this, but she was in high school. So, there it's out there. For them, the social life was going to certain restaurants, and then apparently every clique within the school had a different fast food parking lot that they hung
Oh
out.
yeah, yeah.
Parking lot. The kids who hung out in the Burger King parking lot, and that was how everything was stratified. And the nice thing is, I think as we've grown, there are more things. I've got a teen, I've got a 17-year-old who can now drive himself around, which is both terrifying.
Terrifying.
But places like Low Mill, a lot of the park space that we've been adding, John Hunt Park, the greenways. I think there's more opportunity for kids to have a little bit more to do outside the house. I think that will say that one of the challenges, especially for kids who aren't driving yet, is a lot of neighborhoods are kind of a little bit on islands because there's not that bike and ped connectivity. So kids are pretty much restricted to where they are. So I think if
Sure.
you continue to build out good sidewalk networks and greenway networks, that gives kids the opportunity to range a little farther. I grew up in
Yeah.
a suburban area where, I could ride my bike for forever. There just wasn't a whole lot of, there weren't these enormous roads around us, and I could go forever. And a lot of kids today live in neighborhoods where they don't have that free range. So we love to be able to provide neighborhoods and even connections to schools where parents would feel more comfortable letting their kids walk or bike from point A to point B.
Oh yeah. I think right now what you do is you drop your 14-year-old off at Bridge Street, and I'll tell you what they do.
After hours, right? I mean, they have a certain, like they've got a cutoff. You can't be here with them a guardian after a certain hour, I believe.
So as a musician, I play live music. They would set you up in those middle concrete pads, and walking traffic in Bridge Street would be on the right and the left. But what I found is that I would end up being in the middle of a bunch of middle school kids who were mean, and they actually I think I have some PTSD from this time, but there were just so many, and they all had something really rude to say to me that I did not enjoy playing Bridge Street. I don't know, just a little note there. Middle school kids, take it easy on the big people. We need a break every once in a while, or bring us cake, whatever you want to do.
Learning to become, functioning human beings, right? What's okay to say and what's not. What does it mean to be mean? Do you like having people be mean back to you? And hopefully by the time they're in high school, they've kind of worked their way through that. But yeah, we had a middle schooler, and he was a middle schooler during COVID. So
that's rough.
That kind of stunted that development.
Sure.
Here's how you treat people.
Yeah. You're stuck with adults all the time that are stronger than you. Well, okay. Well, so Dennis, thank you so much for being with us one more time, just for the folks who want to do their own research on what's coming next and keep up with that. What is the website they go to?
So it's Big Picture Huntsville, all one word.com. I would also suggest too, for the folks who are really interested in the development data that I was talking about, probably in the next week or two on the city's website, the main City of Huntsville website. If you type in the term development review, we publish that annual development review that talks about how many homes we're adding, how much population we're adding, where those homes are going, and they can see it all laid out. So it's a fantastic read, whether you're in the realtor community or general population. It's some great data that really gives you a handle on how and where we're growing.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. And I love the transparency of our city. I love that's something that we all have access to. That's really great. Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here. Thank you all for joining us for the Big Huntsville Podcast. I'm Carl. This is Dennis. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Big Huntsville Podcast. If you've enjoyed the stories, the laughs, and maybe learned a little something new about our amazing city, remember, Huntsville isn't just a place, it's a community. And we've got some of the best folks around. So if you like today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend. And if you got a local hero or story you think we should highlight, hit me up. I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, I'm Carl Thomas. Keeping it fun, keeping it real, and always keeping it big here in Huntsville. Catch you later.